So I don't know if any of you've heard this one. Please stop me if you have. Marvel is in shambles. I know. It's not like the entire internet is up in flames about this. No one seems to really be talking about this other than myself. I'm just kidding. Everyone and their mother is talking about this. And basically the catalyst, or I guess the lightning rod, of the entire Marvel demise, as it's kind of being called, I guess, is this Variety article that came out probably about a month ago. That kind of details what exactly is going on with Marvel, with the MCU, all of its just stuff, all the stuff. Now, before I begin, let me just say this: I don't hate Marvel. Even though, it's kind of popular now to hate Marvel, I still think there's some hope in all of this. I truly do believe that they can jump over this, huge controversies and all that type of stuff. Because, hey, listen, Marvel was the gold standard back in 2019. They were literally crapping gold. It was just amazing. But now, since there's blood in the water, everyone's just turning on them and all that because that's the popular thing to do. I'm not necessarily for that. I don't want to crap on them, but I want to give some, just some analysis, if you will, analysis, if you will, specifically about this article, but also just give an analysis on Marvel itself and why I'm not really watching a lot of their stuff anymore. I mean, the last movie I kind of watched in theaters was Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which, again, that's amazing, but also, at the same time, it's a James Gunn film, and James Gunn knows how to make a Marvel film. I mean, he's done at least 2 of them up till this point. This point being Guardians of the Galaxy 3, so I'm not counting that. So it wasn't necessarily, a big surprise that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was gonna be good or not, right? Also, Spider-Man No Way Home, basically the Spider-Man Endgame, basically. But after Quantumania, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing. This is the worst movie I have seen from Marvel, I think, since Howard the Duck. It is Howard the... I wouldn't put it Howard the Duck levels of bad, but maybe like X-Men Origins Wolverine bad. Yeah, I said it. We've gotten to that point, folks. I didn't laugh once. The CGI was terrible. It ended just weirdly with Paul Rudd just walking on the streets. I can't even anymore. This movie just pains me to no end. But dare I say it, this might be the worst MCU movie of all time. Yes, worse than Iron Man 2, worse than Thor 2, which I didn't even think was even possible, but I think we got there. Also, dare I say it, I think this is the worst MCU thing in existence. Yes, it's even worse than Inhumans. Yeah, we got to that point. So yeah, I'm not necessarily looking forward to any MCU things ever again. I'm not really looking forward to anything anymore. I still call myself an MCU fan, but I'm not going to go out of my way to watch an MCU movie in theaters. And I haven't seen Loki Season 2. I don't even know if I'm going to watch Loki Season 2. As of this recording, The Marvels is out in theaters. I don't even think I'm going to watch The Marvels in theaters because I'm just not that interested in the MCU anymore, unless it's glowing reviews. But from what I've heard, The Marvels seems to suck terribly as well. So, I mean, why would I bother? But how did we get here? How did we get to the point where Avengers Endgame, at one point, was the highest grossing film ever, and everyone just adoring it and loving it, the entirety of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the average box office gross for the entirety of the MCU was over $1 billion. That is unheard of. That is uncanny. That will never be replicated in Hollywood ever again. To now just being kind of a joke. Barely able to scrape even. Barely able to gain any excitement. Where did it all go wrong? Well, this article in Variety is supposed to explain a lot of it. So I'm not going to dive into every single little itty-bitty thing that this article kind of talks about. I suggest you go read it for yourself. In case you haven't, which I would assume a lot of you have, but just in case you haven't read it, I suggest that you read it. But with all that being said, let's talk about some of the MCU and why we've gotten from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, all in a matter of 3 to 4 years. The first thing that really comes to mind is the Kang controversy, this whole Jonathan Majors thing, which this article doesn't necessarily, get into a lot, but I would think that it's kind of a big thing for the MCU now, because a lot of people tend to go watch movies now based on if the actor is canceled or not. I mean, just look at The Flash. People thought The Flash was going to skyrocket in popularity and just gang a whole lot of blockbuster money goodness, even though Ezra Miller, they're canceled, rightfully so. But yeah, no one went to see this movie and it bombed at the box office. Yeah, that happened. And honestly, this isn't necessarily as big of an issue because, Jonathan Majors, who plays Kang in, the MCU, he's been in Quantumania, he's been in, he's been in Loki, season 1 and all that, and season 2. But other than those projects, he hasn't really been in anything else. But this is the person that the whole MCU is kind of putting on his shoulders, right? This is going to be the bad guy. Compared to Thanos, which was the main bad guy for phases 1 through 3, which I keep on saying seasons, but it's phases 1 through 3. Kang is going to be the big bad guy for phases 4 through 6. But there's some not so good news for this guy because he's being charged. He is charged and he's going to trial for allegedly, of course, gotta say allegedly because he hasn't been convicted yet, but he allegedly strangled his girlfriend and was abusive to his girlfriend, which is not good. And what's weird is that most of the actors, of course there's one in particular that we'll get into, but whenever the MCU casts anybody, most of the time they hire people that aren't, completely insane or, have a danger of doing this, which will cause PR hell. I mean, especially compared to the DCEU, when, Batman vs. Superman was coming out and Justice League was coming out, all we could hear about was the poor conditions that Joss Whedon put through the entire cast and crew of Justice League and all that, and how we got sad fleck memes throughout the entire thing, and which, by the way, I don't condone any of this, but, Marvel seemed to have a lid on this type of stuff. They tended to hire, people that weren't crazy or insane or did just terrible, horrible things to other people. But then on DC's side, we hear Jared Leto sending his co-stars used condoms, which I will never, ever forget. But was Marvel absolutely perfect? absolutely not. I mean, they did hire that one guy, I can't even remember his name, but there was this one guy who was in Ant-Man, the Ant-Man franchise. He was one of Scott Lang's, groupie type of people, like those. He's one of those people that, was hired to rob people. It wasn't Michael Pena, it was some other guy, but anyway, he had a lot of crap associated with him, and he just went off the deep end, and yeah, Marvel kinda fired him as a result of that. In fact, that's kinda why in Quantumania, he doesn't have his crew with him anymore. It's because of that guy, because there you go. In fact, there may have been a time when Marvel was a little too trigger happy, or the movie studios themselves, like Disney, the top movie head, Alan Horn, was a little too trigger happy because he fired James Gunn after he saw his, late tweets and all that, which were not good, but James Gunn has apologized, and you gotta forgive and move on, But all worked out in the end because now James Gunn is the head of DC Studios. So there you go. But ever since Phase 4, we've been hearing about just an unending bombardment of either actors being canceled or actors being treated like trash. Like, for instance, the Scarlett Johansson thing, when her movie Black Widow came out on Disney+, she was entitled to royalties that Disney wasn't going to give to her and all that, so, they didn't pay her, and ScarJo sued, rightfully so, and Disney settled out of court and all that. But not before weaponizing the global pandemic. Like, she was trying to take advantage of the company because of the global pandemic, which is idiotically stupid. So yeah, this type of stuff, which would have never happened in phases 1 through 3 of the MCU, is happening all the time with phases 4 through 6 now. It's just happening all the time. And it's kind of sickening. But according to this article, they're not even really talking about it. They're kind of saying Marvel's going to pivot completely away from Jonathan Majors' Kang and focus more on Doctor Doom because of this whole thing. And if what it says is true, which I don't know, I'm sure that Variety, what they validated all their sources and all that, but you never know what they're telling is going to be right or wrong. Actually, let me rephrase that. I believe the journalist is just, writing the truth in this scenario, but we don't know if these spokespeople are actually doing that, or it's just the truth right now, but later they're going to be like, oh, no, that we're not doing that. So I'd take that with a grain of salt. But if Doctor Doom was going to be in these movies, hey, I'd be all for it, okay? We need a proper Doctor Doom. The whole crappy Fantastic Four duology in the late 2000s and that crappy 2015 Fant 4 stick was just awful. Those Doctor Dooms were just terrible. So if you get a real Doctor Doom from the comics, or better yet, something that's better than the comics, hey, I'll be all for it. Let's do it. But this also leads me to another big, huge thing that Marvel's kind of doing nowadays, and that is the overexuberance of Marvel and its drama behind the scenes. I don't know how to, tie that perfectly into 2 words, but there you go. Essentially, it was kind of hinted at in this article and heavily exemplified in the book, The Reign of Marvel Studios. I highly recommend you read this book because, yeah, there's a lot of info in there, and it explains an awful lot. And in hindsight, yeah, I can see it. But apparently, because of the pandemic, according to the article and the book, and because of Bob Chapek, who, by the way, is just a terrible CEO that grounded Disney to what it is today, basically, by hurting the creatives and instead of, helping them and curating them, kind of like how Bob Iger kind of did to a point. But anyway, that huge Disney investors meeting in 2020 that Bob Chapek was like, oh, hey guys, we're Disney. It's going to be great. We're coming out with all these great projects. Disney Plus is going to be bombarded with all this garbage, all this crap. Yeah. All the MCU, Marvel projects that were announced then. You want to know how many of those Marvel projects they were actually made before all that happened? Yeah, none of them. They were just logos. Exactly. No scripts. They were just ideas. There was nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just logos. And granted, right, we knew that certain projects were eventually going to come. Like, for instance, the Black Widow movie. We knew that was coming, okay? That was already shot and all that. We knew Shang-Chi was coming. We knew that, certain movies like, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, yeah, those were coming. Scripts were written, directors were chosen, they were going to shoot, all that type of stuff, yeah. Those projects were happening, granted. But there were other projects, especially the ones that were just announced, that weren't ready to be announced. And in fact, were just logos. Like, for instance, Armored Wars. That was supposed to be the War Machine, the Rhodey series, all that type of stuff. Yeah, they didn't write the script yet. They didn't hire the directors yet, and now it's not a series anymore, it's a movie. Yeah, but in this investors meeting, it was told it was going to be a Disney Plus show. Yep. Also, the Fantastic Four, that's just a logo. Of course, Kevin Feige said that they didn't start on anything yet, but they have started working on Fantastic Four, but there was no script. There were no actors, going to do this. There wasn't a director attached to this film. It was just a logo. That's it. But apparently, according to this book and this article, Kevin Feige and also Kathleen Kennedy, they were kind of pressured into announcing all these many different projects that they were thinking about putting into development, but they didn't put into development quite yet. Also, to bombard Marvel shows onto Disney Plus, which means, the whole MCU, Disney Plus was really focused on the MCU because you had to watch almost every single thing in order to get people to what's going to happen next in the MCU. You gotta watch the Falcon Winter Soldier. You want to know what's happening next in the MCU in order to watch, the Marvels? Oh, you gotta watch Loki season 2, There's a show coming out on Disney Plus from the MCU that is coming out every single day. And it has been noted that Bob Chapek, who not only made Kevin Feige's job even harder by giving him a lot of oversight and hiring more and more people above Kevin Feige in between him and the Disney movies executive head and all that, instead of just having Kevin Feige and then on top of him, it's the movie executive and all that. It's business. I know it's really hard to follow. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. That's basically what happened. But on top of that, Chapek had announced that he wanted something from the MCU premiering on Disney Plus every week. Either an episode of a TV show or a movie every week. There's 52 weeks in a year. That's a lot of content, and that's a lot of work. So much work that Kevin Feige couldn't do what he normally does with all these movies and kind of be the overseer of everything, you know? And he just kind of let directors kind of do their thing and let the writers kind of do their thing without any supervision from him, because he can't be in 2 places at once, let alone like 400 different places at once. This is what I'm talking about. In phases 1 through 3, we did not have all of this, trash. We did not have all these announcements and all this stuff coming out, right? We only had phase 1 announced, phase 2 announced, phase 3 announced. Yeah, there might be a canceled project here and there, but that wasn't really Kevin Feige's forte, like the Inhumans. There was going to be an Inhumans movie, but because that was so intricately entwined with Marvel TV, Kevin Feige decided to stop that, and it was just, kind of cut loose from the entirety of modern day MCU. And instead was released as a mini-series on ABC. And yeah, it sucked. But that was one project. Nowadays, we keep on hearing about all of this different news that comes out of the MCU these days. Like, for instance, the Fantastic Four. I can't believe how many different videos and how many different announcements we have had about directors coming and going on this film, all these writers coming and going on this film, all of these actors rumored to play Susan Storm. Like, for instance, Margot Robbie, at one point, reports were saying was going to play Sue Storm. But, of course, she's too popular, so they couldn't really, have her as her. But you know what? Reed Richards, Adam Driver's going to play Reed Richards and all that, but nowadays it's Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm and Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. It's just all these different sways and all that type of stuff. It's just absolutely insane. Back then, despite what you may think about Captain Marvel or Brie Larson or anybody like that, but back in the day, you heard of Captain Marvel. Brie Larson was going to play Captain Marvel, and it was announced in San Diego Comic-Con, I believe, in 2017. And then, lo and behold, what came out? Captain Marvel with Brie Larson. There you go. That's it. That's all we need. But nowadays, it's just all this hoopla and just kind of scrambling together, trying to make something with the Fantastic Four. Now we're just kind of seeing, who's going to direct this? Who's going to play this part? It's all over the place. Also, did you hear about Mahershala Ali? He's a 3-time Academy Award winner. Where's he been at? The last movie he was in was like in 2019 or 2020 or something like that. It was a while ago. You want to know where he's been at? He's been waiting to play Blade, because apparently he was supposed to have shot Blade 3 years ago. But because directors keep on coming and going, and because scriptwriters keep on coming and going, Blade has been delayed over and over and over again, to the point where Mahershala Ali was at the point of just quitting the MCU in its entirety, All I'm going to say is this. In phase 1 through 3, this would not happen ever, okay? Everyone was happy on set, and even if they weren't, there would be no way in hell that anything like this would leak. But nowadays, it's just like everybody and their mother is just telling every single story that they heard about from another person to the news people about how tumultuous, all of these creatives are these days. And honestly, it's getting pretty toasty because, on top of everything else, I feel like the MCU phases 4 through 6 you've got to keep up with every single piece of media that comes out of the MCU these days. Hence the, Bob Chapek demand that everyone has to watch everything within the MCU in order to get anything, Like, for instance, that's when I kind of dropped off of the MCU, was actually Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, because, phases 1 through 3, you can watch literally any movie and kind of pick it up and keep going, you don't have to start all the way back to Iron Man. You can start at Avengers Endgame if you wanted to. But nowadays, in order to get context clues with everything, you have to have watched literally everything in order to get even the finest minute details. Like, for instance, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, you had to watch WandaVision in order to figure out what's going on in that film, because Wanda turns evil. And if you haven't watched WandaVision yet, you jump into Doctor Strange, it's like, kind of bizarre that she's evil now. Why is she evil now? Also, with all the scrambling of everything going on these days, apparently, they don't even know what showrunners were. There were no showrunners on any of the Marvel shows. The showrunner was basically Kevin Feige, and there was one director that was directing the entirety of a show. That's it. No showrunner. Yeah. Kevin Feige, I know you can do a lot, and you've done a lot, but you can't be a showrunner on 5 different shows and, be the executive producer on 5 movies at the same time. He just can't. Now you're probably thinking, oh yeah, this is tumultuous. This is a mess. How can it possibly get any worse? Well, get ready, because here we go. This is the critiquing part of this article. And this brings us to issues with the article, which, trust me, there are a lot of issues with this article. Namely that there's a lot of things that I don't even think the journalist would even know about the creation of making a movie, let alone an MCU movie. So this journalist who wrote this article, who I'm not going to name because I don't want anybody bashing her in the comments or anything, or him bashing in the comments or whatever on the article, or trying to, whatever. Just leave the journalist alone. Just leave them alone. Anyway, the journalist really points out the fact that there's been a lot of weird, crazy things with the Marvels, about how the fact that they need to do multiple upon multiple reshoots, and about how during post-production, the director of the Marvels was actually working on another film, another, not MCU related piece of property. Now, there's a couple things here that I would like to address. Number one being, everyone in the MCU does both these things somewhat interchangeably. Like, for instance, preceding the pandemic, James Gunn, who was working on The Suicide Squad, was in post-production of that film while he was starting pre-production and starting to shoot, while, all the pandemic stuff was going on, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. While, on top of all that, apparently, negotiating to become DC's head, the studio runner. So it's not out of the ordinary for a director to work on multiple different projects at the same time. In fact, that's kind of part of the business. If you don't want to, lose relevance, you kind of have to work on multiple projects at the same time. Also, on top of all that, the whole reshoot thing, like the Marvels had to have multiple reshoots and all that type of stuff, that has been happening with every single MCU project since Iron Man, or at the very least, Phase 2. So there's nothing different about the Marvels having to have multiple reshoots than, I don't know, Ant-Man Quantumania having multiple reshoots, which, by the way, apparently is one of the main contributors of the huge overworked VFX, people and all that, you hear about all that. Apparently that's one of the reasons why the VFX artists are so overworked, is because there's multiple reshoots and you gotta do it very fast right now. But yeah, according to the article, that's basically why the Marvels is now failing at the box office, which, no, that's not the reason why the Marvels is failing at the box office. The main contributor as to why the Marvels is failing at the box office is because all these actors and actresses and writers and all these people that need to promote the film couldn't promote the film because of the writers and actors strikes. I mean, they were basically barred from going on any promotional waves. You know how Marvel loves to just promote to the nth degree with all their actors and actresses and everybody just, going on all these interviews and all that? Yeah, they couldn't do that because of the strikes. So not a lot of people knew that this film was even coming out. So it's not getting a lot of box office. Also, a side note here, even though this is the highest grossing opening for a African-American female director of all time, grossing 110 million worldwide. But yeah, it's a gross disappointment apparently. There's that. Also, I've been teasing this point, but we're just gonna get into it right now, and that is the VFX heist, or the VFX crunch, if you will. Just the big VFX bombardments of work that they have to do for every MCU film and TV show ever made. So again, with all the mess and stuff going on here, The Marvels was actually supposed to be the first film in Phase 5, other than Quantumania. But apparently, Quantumania was farther ahead in the VFX work than the Marvels was. So, you know what happened? They traded places. Yep, the Marvels was pushed back and Ant-Man was pushed up. And when people heard that, they had a fit, and rightfully so, because even though they were ahead, they were nowhere near ready for a March release date, which explains all the more why those VFX were just awful. They were just utterly crap. And that's no disrespect or anything to the VFX artists. That's all the disrespect to the higher-ups at Marvel and at Disney. Now, I'm not really going to dive into the entirety of the VFX work because honestly, there are more better put together videos on YouTube specifically and articles across the web explaining everything more in depth than I ever could, because I have no idea how VFX work or how to do VFX. But basically the summary is they are pumping out so much stuff that the VFX artists can't keep up with it and can't keep up a consistent amount of quality to the work. And it's gotten to the point where they do it for just pennies. They literally sleep in their offices, eat dry ramen, and just pee in a bottle for pennies. They do it for so cheap, and they work 24/7 for pennies. That's the state of the VFX industry as of this year. Now, in order to keep the stock prices up and keep everything, afloat, like nothing bad is happening, Disney needed a scapegoat. So who do they call to pin the blame on for Quantumania? The VFX supervisor for most Marvel properties, Victoria Alonso. The one who basically was Kevin Feige's right-hand woman, who basically battled the storm with Kevin Feige and is one of the main contributing factors to why the MCU is as good as it is in its own right. I'm just realizing that if I say what I'm going to say in this video, Disney will probably never hire me for anything. But, well, I need to talk about this because it's important, so yeah, screw that. So this really important piece of the MCU puzzle was admittedly fired for her speaking out against the House of Mouse because of Bob Chapek's Don't Say Gay bill, like, ignoring and all that type of stuff. You said some things about how Disney had ignored the Don't Say Gay bill and all that type of thing, and yeah, apparently Disney didn't like that, so they fired her. After years of dedicated hard work, after giving 199%, delivering the best product possible, in fact, the best product impossibly possible, she was let go because of the Don't Say Gay ignorance of Disney. Also, just to add a little zest to the flavor of this criticism, if you will, Disney had wanted Victoria Alonso to take out any pride symbols or any, LGBTQ related material out of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania for foreign release. And she's told them straight up, no. Now, admittedly, this is a culture of yes. This is the yes department, apparently, because VFX, they have to say yes, otherwise they go off, the studio will go off and get another person who will say yes, even though it's probably a no, but they will say yes in order to get their money. Again, pennies on the dollar. But this is probably the first time ever in this entire history of VFX for Marvel and all that, that someone actually told them no. Now, with all that being said, of course, they did have outsourced the VFX to take out all the pride symbols and all that and fire her for her involvement with promoting another film that wasn't MCU related. But everyone had been doing that previously. Directors had, producers have, actors have, but she's the only one that can't, for some obligatory reason. Now, to be honest, it is technically true that I guess she was supposed to do that, but it's very hard to kind of, think about the reason for this. I mean, they could have just swept it under the rug because she's been there for a very long time and created a lot of great stuff. So promoting another film, you would think that they would just sweep that under the rug and be like, be bygones, be bygones. But no, I don't think so. And it's just apparently growing. Like, according to the article points out that it's starting to grow a tense and overarching rot in how Marvel makes their stuff because of half-baked scripts. The reason why the VFX were terrible in She-Hulk and in Quantumania were because the scripts weren't even done for these things, and the VFX artists needed to complete these things, but then kind of sweep them aside because they weren't going to use it anymore and just do the whole thing all over again for this other scene that just came in. So yeah, turns out the reason why all the CGI in Marvel movies suck is because the writers were not given good direction and were given a lot of rewrites basically midway through production. Yeah. Yeah. Now, to be fair, Marvel is not the end-all be-all of VFX crunch. I mean, DC's a big, huge part of this. Universal, a big, huge part of this too. You know, every studio is part of the problem, which leads me to believe that the VFX artists probably need to unionize. And in fact, I endorse the unionization of the VFX artists, and it will probably lead me to be blacklisted in Hollywood, but I don't care. You need complete representation in Hollywood for, you know, not crapping in a can while the VFX for, I don't know, The Last Airbender or something is spewing out. Which leads me to the end of the video. And here's the thing, right? I know the MCU is kind of a train wreck nowadays, but I have a feeling, you know, it's always the darkest before the dawn. Will Marvel ever come back into, you know, awesomeness? I believe it will. Now, how long that will take, I have no idea, but it's honestly up to them. If they can make decent products, you know, ethically, without any, you know, garbage and anything, and kind of slow down production of everything, which they intend on doing, and I see them doing that, I think they can maybe make Marvel movies an event again. And again, this is coming from a huge Disney fan. I am a huge Disney fan. Don't let this video detract you from that. I am a huge Disney fan. I'm a huge Marvel fan. I'm a huge MCU fan. But things need to change. Even the best fruit needs to cut out some bruises. Anyway, though, guys, that's it for this video. I'm sorry for all the rambling or whatever, but what do you guys think? Is the MCU unsavable? How would you save Marvel? Why don't you let me know in the comments down below? Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell. More vids coming your way, and hey, take care, guys.